For the first 20 years I owned this property, the back fence line was the border I warned my grandchildren about every summer, not because of anything dangerous on the other side, because of what crept through from the field beyond it, ticks. Specifically the blacklegged tick, the one that carries Lyme disease, the one that has been found in every corner of this country. My grandchildren knew the routine. Come inside, shoes off, heads checked, before anything else. I sprayed the fence line with whatever the garden center sold me. It worked for about 10 days, and then it was done, and I was starting over. What I did not know then, and what a researcher at Acadia University in Nova Scotia has since confirmed, is that the blacklegged tick has no eyes, none. It finds you almost entirely by smell, reading the carbon dioxide on your breath and the faint acids on your skin, which means the answer to the tick problem is not a spray that washes away in the rain. The answer is a living barrier that never stops working. Here is the truth about tick control. 7 ordinary garden plants produce compounds that scramble a tick's chemical senses the same way static scrambles a radio signal. They are not toxic to your family. They grow stronger every year. And when you place them correctly, your yard becomes a place ticks read as the wrong destination before they ever cross the threshold. I have been growing all 7 along that back fence line for the better part of a decade, and I have saved one detail about the 7th plant for the end of this video because it does something none of the others can, and it changed that fence line completely. If you are new here, welcome to the Gardening Grandma. Hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss a video. I post every single week with honest, practical gardening advice. No products to sell you, no fluff, just real knowledge from someone who has made every one of these mistakes herself. Now, let us walk that fence line together. Plant 1, marigold, the flower that has been earning its keep in gardens for 3,000 years. The Aztecs called it the flower of 20 petals, and scattered the orange blooms to guide the spirits of the dead back home on what we now call the Day of the Dead. What those ancient growers understood by instinct, we now understand by chemistry. Here is what most gardeners never discover until the damage is already done. The flowers and leaves of the marigold carry pyrethrum, a natural compound that scrambles an insect's nervous system on contact. And the roots do something even more useful. They leak a substance called alpha-terthienol into the surrounding soil, a compound toxic to the root knot nematodes that destroy vegetable beds from below. The compound floods the nematode with oxidative stress until the pest simply gives out. So a marigold defends your garden on 2 fronts at once, above the ground and below it. Here is where nearly every gardener goes wrong. That underground root magic is real, but it works only when you plant marigolds as a dense stand a full 2 months before you set out the vegetables you are protecting in the very same spot. One lonely marigold tucked beside a tomato in June expecting a miracle will let you down every time. Sown thickly in bold drifts along a play area or the edge of a bed, they earn their keep and then some. My rule now is simple. Plant them in a solid wall, not a polite scattering. They grow anywhere from zone 2 to zone 11, shrug off heavy clay that defeats fussier flowers, and ask for nothing beyond full sun and a drink when the top inch of soil dries. Plant 2, rosemary, the herb that carries more history and memory than almost anything else you could name. In Shakespeare's Hamlet, a heartbroken Ophelia hands out sprigs with the line, "There is rosemary, that is for remembrance." That was not the playwright's invention. For centuries, mourners tossed rosemary into open graves. Australians and New Zealanders still pin it to their coats on Anzac Day because the herb grows wild across the Gallipoli battlefields. And a 13th century tale holds that the aging Queen of Hungary, crippled with pain, was restored by rosemary steeped in wine, a recipe that became one of Europe's first perfumes. Here is what most gardeners never discover until the damage is already done. That piney Mediterranean scent carries up to 20% camphor by weight, along with a sharp eucalyptus compound called cineole. To a questing tick perched on a grass tip, waving its front legs in search of the carbon dioxide that means a meal, a hedge of rosemary is a roar of static, drowning out every signal. The way to use it is all about placement. Set it where people move, along a path edge, beside the patio, at the lip of the porch steps, so every time a sleeve brushes past, those oils lift into the air right where you sit. My rule now is simple. Rosemary comes from dry, rocky sea cliffs. Its old name, rosmarinus, means dew of the sea. Give it grit and sharp drainage, and it will perfume your doorway for a decade or more across zones 7 through 10. Plant it in soggy ground or heavy clay that holds winter wet and nothing will save it. Plant 3, Chrysanthemum, the cheerful autumn flower that is quietly the most lethal thing on today's list. The Chinese were grinding chrysanthemum flowers into bug powder as far back as the 1st century, trading the material west along the Silk Road. It became famous as Persian insect powder, sold commercially by 1828. French soldiers in the Napoleonic Wars carried the very same dust to fight fleas and body lice in their camps. Around 1840, growers on the Croatian coast discovered a species packing an even harder punch, the Dalmatian daisy, which still supplies natural pyrethrin to the world today. Those powderthrins are the reason chemists built entire families of synthetic bug sprays, the powderthroids, trying to copy one flower. Here is what most gardeners never discover until the damage is already done. In a living tick, contact with powderthrin jams the sodium channels that fire its nerves, and the animal seizes, loses coordination, and dies. That word contact is the entire key to how you use garden mums. A living ornamental mum sitting by your deck will not gas the whole yard with enough pyrethrin to shield it. What it makes is a strip of contact poison right at the flower head, potent exactly where a tick would actually touch it. So set them where ticks must cross to reach you, along the deck steps, the lawn's edge, the doorway. Pinch the growing tips back every couple of weeks until early July, and the plant becomes a low, dense thicket of blooms by fall. My rule now is simple. Keep chrysanthemums away from wherever your pollinators are working at midday. That same pyrethrin is hard on bees. Garden mums return reliably across zones 4 through 9 in rich, steadily moist soil that still drains clean. Plant 4, Lavender, the plant that has passed through the hands of emperors, monks, and every generation of gardeners in between. The Romans gave it its name from the Latin lavar, meaning to wash, because they threw it into their public baths. Roman soldiers on the march packed it to dress their wounds and keep them from turning septic. The Greek physician Dioscorides, serving under Nero, wrote up its uses in the 1st century. The great herbalist Hildegard of Bingen prescribed it in her medieval cloister 1,000 years later. In Old Provence, the women who scrubbed the town's laundry were called the lavandiers, and they washed the linens in lavender-scented soap. The fields and the wash and the very word all braid together. Here is what most gardeners never discover until the damage is already done. Wild lavender loaded its leaves with 2 compounds, linalool and linalool acetate, to keep insects from chewing it to pieces on the hot limestone cliffs where it evolved. Those same 2 compounds swamp a tick's chemical senses. The plant's ancient armor against being eaten becomes your armor at the ankle. Grow it in thick borders along the walk and the sitting spots, wherever a passing leg will bruise the stems and free the oil into the air you breathe. My rule now is simple. The mistake that kills lavender every time is kindness. Feed it rich soil, water it generously, sink it into heavy clay, and it drowns. It evolved to be starved and baked. Give it lean, gritty, sharply drained ground, 6 hours of hard sun, and nothing more, and English lavender will hold its silvery fragrant mounds for years across zones 5 through 9, growing sweeter in poor soil than it ever would in good. Plant 5, Garlic, the plant that sat in the pockets of the men who raised the pyramids. The Greek historian Herodotus wrote that the very walls of the Great Pyramid, recorded how much garlic and onion was fed to the laborers. The Egyptians handed it out daily in the belief that it gave them the strength to haul the stone. Clay models of garlic bulbs have turned up in Egyptian graves dating back more than 5,000 years. And during the Second World War, when penicillin ran short, British and Russian field doctors packed raw garlic into open wounds to hold back gangrene. Here is what most gardeners never discover until the damage is already done. When a garlic clove is cut or crushed, an enzyme fires and produces allicin, the sharp sulfur compound behind the entire smell. Allicin breaks down further into diol disulfide, and ticks want absolutely nothing to do with either one. The beauty of garlic in a yard is that it does its work underground and mostly out of sight. No flower show required, just a steady chemical signal in the soil and air that pests read as unwelcome. Slip cloves through your mixed beds, in among the roses, beside the vegetables, where it quietly lowers pest pressure on everything around it without a single drop of spray. My rule now is simple. The timing trips up nearly every beginner, and it is the opposite of what most people assume. Garlic wants to go into the ground in autumn, not spring, so the roots can grow strong and deep through the cold months before the green tops ever shoot up. It survives cold, down past 15 below, and asks little in return. Full sun, loose, well-drained soil, and it comes back reliably across zones 3 through 9. Before plant 6, I want to hear from you. Drop your U.S. state or your USDA hardiness zone in the comments right now. I read every single one. Knowing where you are growing shapes what I cover each week, and it helps me give you advice that actually fits your climate. Now plant 6, and this one comes with a warning and a rescue in the same breath. Plant 6, mountain mint, specifically clustered mountain mint, the native cousin of common peppermint that almost no one knows about. Here is the warning first. Common peppermint's oils truly do repel ticks and mosquitoes, but its roots are a conquering army, sending runners out under everything until it has swallowed the entire bed. If you grow it, jail it in a pot. Here is what most gardeners never discover until the damage is already done. A native cousin called clustered mountain mint grows in a polite, well-behaved clump instead of an invasion. It is threaded through with pulgon, the same cooling compound peppermint uses to drive insects off. Crush a leaf, rub it along your arm, and the mosquitoes leave you be. Deer and rabbits will not touch it. And then there is the detail that lifts this plant above every other repellent on today's list. In a Penn State Extension trial testing 86 native plants for their pull on pollinators, clustered mountain mint finished first, drawing the single most diverse crowd of bees, butterflies, wasps, and flies of anything they measured, so thick with insects at bloom that you can stand beside it and hear it hum. So you get a plant that ticks and deer both refuse sitting in the center of a living cloud of pollinators. A garden almost never manages to do both jobs at once. Its frosty silver-white bracts catch the last light and glow at dusk in a way that stops you at the kitchen window. My rule now is simple. Give clustered mountain mint room at a woodland edge or a boundary line rather than a tight formal bed. It travels a little by shallow rhizomes, never enough to bully, just enough to make a proper drift. Moist, fertile ground in full sun to part shade, and it holds its own from zones 3 through 8. Plant 7, wormwood, the most useful plant on today's list, and the one that does something none of the others can. Vincent van Gogh's beloved absinthe was distilled from wormwood, the green fairy that haunted the cafes of 19th century Paris, until the drink was banned over its thujon. In the book of Revelation, a star called Wormwood falls to earth and turns a third of the world's waters bitter. This was long known simply as the most bitter of all herbs. Country folk knew its power long before chemists named it. Dried wormwood was strewn among stored clothes to keep the moths out. Clippings were tucked into chicken nesting boxes to drive off lice, mites, and fleas. Its leaves and stems are loaded with absinthium and thujon, compounds that insects and browsing animals find deeply offensive to taste and smell. Here is what most gardeners never discover until the damage is already done. The other 6 plants on today's list repel ticks directly. Wormwood does something more strategic. White-tailed deer are the ferry service for adult blacklegged ticks, carrying them in from the woods to drop off and breed in your grass, and deer will not go near wormwood. Its bitterness is so reliable that plant guides list it flatly as deer and rabbit resistant without qualification. A run of wormwood along your outer property line, planted across the gaps where deer would slip through, thins the very traffic that brings the ticks in to begin with. You are not just guarding the yard, you are cutting the supply line at its source. My rule now is simple. Wormwood wants the hard life to thrive. Lean, dry, sandy, low-nutrient ground and full sun, nothing more. Give it rich compost and generous water, and the stems flop and the roots rot. Starve it, and it stands tall and silver and bracingly bitter through zones 4 through 8. One word of care worth saying plainly. Wormwood is toxic if eaten. Wear gloves when you cut it back, and keep it well clear of the vegetable rows. Now I want to tell you the thing I promised at the beginning. The year I planted wormwood along the back fence line, something else happened that I did not immediately connect. The deer stopped crossing through the property, not gradually. They simply stopped. I noticed it that October when the garden looked exactly as I had left it. No hosta crowns chewed down to the soil, no rose canes stripped. And then my neighbor asked me one afternoon if I had put up a fence back there, because the deer that used to cross from his property through mine had vanished. I had not put up a fence. I had put in a row of wormwood. It took me several weeks to make the connection. And once I did, I went back and read everything I could find about what deer carry. Because every adult black-legged tick that reaches your lawn arrived on something, almost always a deer. When the deer stopped crossing that fence line, they stopped delivering. The following summer, I found fewer ticks in that yard than I had in any of the 20 years before, not because of a spray, because one bitter silver plant had quietly closed the door. So there you have them, my dear. 7 plants that earn their place in your yard every season. Marigolds in bold drifts along the play area and the vegetable bed, planted thickly and early enough to do the work underground that one lonely plant never could. Rosemary along the path edges and the porch steps where every passing sleeve releases what a tick reads as an impossible signal. Chrysanthemums at the deck stairs and the lawn's edge where a tick must cross the flower to reach you. Lavender in lean, gritty, sharply drained ground along the walkways. Poor soil, or it drowns. Garlic slipped through the mixed beds in autumn, not spring, working quietly underground through everything you are already growing. Clustered mountain mint at the boundary line where it holds off ticks and deer, while drawing every pollinator in the neighborhood, and wormwood at the outermost edge, guarding the supply line itself, making your yard the wrong destination before a tick is ever delivered. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 7 are you already growing, and which one are you adding this season? Drop your state or your zone in the comments and tell me. I read every single one, and your answers shape what I cover next. If this video helped you, please share it with one person who has spent summers worrying about ticks. It costs you nothing, and it might genuinely change how they use their yard. If you are not subscribed yet, now is the time. I post every single week with this kind of honest, specific gardening information. No fluff, nothing to sell you, just real knowledge from someone who spent 20 years spraying a fence line before she figured out she could just grow the answer instead. Until then, happy gardening. Take care of yourselves, and take care of those beautiful gardens of yours.